A sponge diver's hand brushed against corroded bronze in a 2,000-year-old shipwreck. That accidental touch would eventually reveal the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek device so advanced it rewrites our technological history. By the end of this journey, you will understand how a fistful of gears modeled the entire cosmos, and why its discovery forces us to rethink 1,000 lost years of science. How could a civilization with no electricity build a complex astronomical computer, and what happened to the knowledge that made it possible? What does it mean when we find a masterpiece that has no place in our timeline? The Aegean Sea holds its secrets in deep, quiet water. For more than 2,000 years, a shipwreck lay undisturbed on the seabed near the island of Antikythera, a silent time capsule from the classical world. When sponge divers finally stumbled upon it in the year 1900, the initial excitement was for the treasures everyone expected to find. They recovered breathtaking bronze and marble statues, figures of gods and heroes that were immediately celebrated as masterpieces. Among these artistic wonders, however, was a far more puzzling artifact. It was a lump of heavily corroded bronze, about the size of a large book, fused together by centuries of seawater and mineral deposits. To the early archaeologists, it was an oddity, perhaps a piece of an old clock or a navigational instrument. It was catalogued and set on a shelf in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, its true story seemingly over before it had even begun. For decades, it sat there quietly, a mystery in plain sight. Scholars would occasionally glance at it, offering tentative guesses. Some thought it might be an astrolabe, a simpler device for measuring the stars. Others dismissed it as a curiosity with no clear purpose. The label beside it reflected this polite confusion. The real breakthrough, the moment the artifact began to whisper its secrets, came much later. In the mid-20th century, a historian of science named Derek J. de Solla Price took a much closer look. Using early X-ray technology, he peered inside the corroded mass. What he saw was astonishing. Instead of a solid block, the images revealed intricate layers of precisely cut gear wheels, dials, and inscriptions. It was a machine. A complex, geared machine from antiquity. Price's work planted a flag, a bold declaration that this was not just an instrument, but a computer. His suspicion was a spark in the dark, a hypothesis that would take another half-century and far more advanced tools to confirm. This unassuming lump, rescued from a Roman-era shipwreck meant to carry art and luxury goods, was itself the greatest treasure on board. Its discovery was a quiet accident, overshadowed by more immediately beautiful finds. Yet it is this corroded bundle of gears that now forces us to rewrite chapters of our history books. It stands as physical proof that a level of mechanical sophistication we associated with the Renaissance existed in the ancient Mediterranean, a full millennium before we thought such things were possible. The question shifted from what is this thing to a far more profound puzzle. What kind of mind conceived it, and what world of knowledge was lost when it sank beneath the waves? Those early X-ray images were like a first glimpse into a hidden city. For decades, scholars had politely classified the object as a navigational astrolabe or perhaps an ornate philosophical model, its internal gears seen as decorative rather than functional. This was a perfectly reasonable assumption. The ancient Greeks were known for their celestial models, beautiful spheres that showed the fixed stars, but these were typically demonstrations of cosmic order, not intricate calculating engines. The heavy calcification from 2 millennia underwater had done its job well, cementing the device's 82 separate fragments into a single, bewildering lump. The delicate Greek lettering etched onto its front and back plates was worn and obscured like a faded map missing its key. Initial attempts to translate these inscriptions yielded only fragments of text about celestial cycles, which seemed to support the idea of a simple teaching tool or an elaborate calendar. The true breakthrough, the moment the ground shifted beneath historians' feet, came when researchers began to clean the fragments with meticulous care. As layers of marine limestone were gently removed, the true nature of the artifact started to emerge. It was not one solid piece, but a collapsed clockwork of interlocking components. Those early X-rays, primitive by today's standards, cut through the corrosion and revealed the ghostly outlines of precisely cut gear teeth, stacked layers of dials, and a complex assembly that clearly served a mechanical purpose. This was no ornamental statue. The arrangement of the gears implied calculation, a physical embodiment of mathematical relationships. The initial theory of a simple astrolabe was instantly rendered obsolete. An astrolabe might have one or two moving parts, but this device had dozens, arranged in a dense, purposeful architecture. This phase of discovery teaches a quiet lesson about historical inquiry. Our understanding of the past is often limited by the tools and assumptions of our own present. We tend to fit ancient artifacts into the neat categories we already know. When you find a complex geared object in a 2,000-year-old shipwreck, the logical conclusion is that it must be simple, because our historical narrative says complex machines did not exist yet. The Antikythera mechanism refused to fit. It was an outlier, a data point that stubbornly contradicted the established timeline. The painstaking cleaning and those first blurry X-rays did more than reveal brass gears. They revealed a profound anomaly. They forced a fundamental question. If this was not a simple instrument, then what, in the name of all the gods on Olympus, was it built to do? The answer would require not just better eyes, but an entirely new way of seeing. The real revelation came not from a library, but from a hospital. In the early 2000s, a team of scientists had a brilliant idea. They borrowed a tool designed to see inside the human body without a single incision, a high-resolution X-ray computed tomography scanner. This machine could peer through the thick layers of calcified rock and corrosion that had guarded the mechanism's secrets for so long. It was a completely non-invasive process, like giving the 2,000-year-old artifact a three-dimensional X-ray. The results were nothing short of breathtaking. For the first time, researchers from Cardiff University, the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, and the International Antikythera Mechanism Research Project could see the object not as a solid lump, but as a transparent digital ghost. They could rotate it, zoom in, and separate its layers in virtual space. What they found was a miniature cosmos of interlocking bronze. The scans revealed gear wheels within gear wheels, some with teeth finer than a millimeter, arranged in precise mathematical stacks. They counted the teeth on gears that had been completely hidden from view, numbers like 127 and 223, which are not random. These are prime numbers, figures deeply tied to astronomical cycles. The machine was not just a collection of parts, it was a physical equation. Even more astonishing, the tomography picked up the faint, shadowy traces of ancient Greek letters etched onto the inner surfaces of the plates, inscriptions that had been invisible to the naked eye for centuries. These were not decorative markings, they were the device's user manual and its theory of operation, written directly onto its bones. This technological leap was the key that finally unlocked the door. Before the scan, the Antikythera mechanism was a magnificent question mark. After the scan, it became a decipherable text. The raw data provided a complete blueprint, a map of its intricate clockwork soul. Researchers could now see exactly how one gear turned another, how a pin slid in a slot to model variable motion, how the entire assembly was designed to mirror the complex dance of the heavens. The speculation was over. This was not a philosopher's toy or a simple calendar. It was a precise, predictive astronomical computer engineered to calculate the positions of the sun, the moon, and likely the planets to predict eclipses and to track the cycles of athletic games like the Olympics. The CT scan did more than reveal gears. It confirmed a reality that had seemed impossible. It gave us the first clear look into a lost world of engineering, a silent testament to a level of technical ambition we never knew existed in that era. With the machine's physical secrets laid bare, the next great challenge began. How do you translate a blueprint of bronze and Greek text into a working understanding of the cosmos it was built to model? The mechanism's true genius lies in its miniature cosmos of moving parts. We are not looking at a simple collection of gears, but at a sophisticated, integrated system, a physical computer built from bronze. At least 30 separate gear wheels, each meticulously cut by hand, were housed within a wooden case about the size of a shoebox. This was not a static model, it was a dynamic engine. The gears were arranged in what we now call a differential gear train, a configuration that allows one input to drive multiple outputs at different calculated speeds. For centuries, historians of technology credited the invention of the differential gear to the clockmakers of the European Renaissance, around the 16th century. The Antikythera mechanism proves this technology was mastered over 1,000 years earlier. This single fact shatters a long-held timeline of innovation. It means the ancient Greek engineers who designed this device possessed a conceptual understanding of gearing that would not be seen again for generations. But the purpose of this engineering is even more specific and profound. The gear teeth themselves hold the key. They are not decorative and their counts are not arbitrary. Look at a gear with 127 teeth and another with 223. These are not round numbers you would choose for simple construction. They are precise mathematical values chosen because they mirror the heavens. A gear with 127 teeth models the relationship between the sun and the moon with incredible accuracy, a cycle known as the Metonic cycle, which lasts 19 years. Another gear with 223 teeth tracks the Saros cycle, an 18-year period that predicts when eclipses will recur. This is the heart of the machine's magic. It does not just show the sky, it calculates it. By turning a single hand crank on the side, the operator would set this entire bronze universe in motion. As the input gear turned, it engaged this precise train of interlocking wheels. The specific ratios of the gear teeth transformed that simple rotary motion into a complex simulation. One dial would advance to show the phase of the moon, another pointer would sweep across the zodiac to show the sun's position, and a small, intricate subdial would slowly tick toward the date of the next solar or lunar eclipse. The abstract mathematics of celestial motion, the kind scribbled on papyrus by astronomers, was here made solid, tangible, and visible. It turned prediction into a physical act. You could literally watch the future unfold with a turn of your wrist. This was not a tool for navigation, it was a tool for understanding, a philosopher's engine made of metal. It asked its user to consider the cosmos not as a distant mystery, but as a beautiful, predictable machine, one they could hold in their hands. So we have this astonishing device, a working model of the heavens built with gears that should not exist for another millennium. A single, stunning artifact, but that leads to the next inevitable question. Could something this advanced really be the only one of its kind? This was a machine that made the future visible. By turning a single hand crank on its side, an ancient user could effectively scroll through time. As the gears meshed and turned, pointers on the front and back dials would advance, not just showing the current day or phase of the moon, but predicting celestial events months and even decades ahead. On its front face, a large dial displayed the Greek zodiac and an Egyptian calendar, with a pointer for the sun's annual journey. A second, smaller dial tracked the phases of the moon, likely with a beautiful, rotating black and white sphere to show its waxing and waning. But the true marvel was its predictive power, a complex assembly of gears, including one with 223 teeth, drove a pointer around a subsidiary dial that counted down the months and years until the next solar or lunar eclipse. This was not guesswork, it was mechanical computation. The machine even accounted for the moon's subtle irregularities. Its orbit is not a perfect circle. It speeds up and slows down in a predictable pattern. To model this, the engineers devised a brilliant pin and slot mechanism. A small pin on one gear engaged a slotted arm on another, converting uniform rotary motion into the variable speed that mirrors the moon's actual elliptical path through the sky. This single feature demonstrates a level of observational accuracy and mechanical ingenuity that is simply staggering for its time. Beyond the heavens, the mechanism was grounded in the rhythms of earthly life. Inscriptions on its back cover include Parapegmata, lists that connected celestial cycles to agricultural advice, weather patterns, and the rising and setting of important stars. Another dial famously tracked the 4-year cycle of major Panhellenic games, including the Olympics. With one rotation of a crank, a scholar, a ship's captain, or a temple official could consult the positions of the gods in the sky, check the calendar for the next great athletic festival, and know the best time to plant crops or set sail. It wove together the cosmic and the mundane into a single, operable system. This transforms our understanding of its purpose. It was not merely a philosopher's toy locked away in a library. It was a practical instrument of immense utility. It provided a stable, predictable framework for a society that organized its religious, political, and economic life around celestial cycles. The Antikythera mechanism did not just calculate the sky, it helped to order an entire civilization, proving that advanced astronomy was not an abstract pursuit, but a vital technology embedded in the very fabric of ancient life. But to truly appreciate its brilliance, we must look at the moon, not as a simple white disk in the sky, but as it truly moves in a subtle and complex celestial dance. The ancient Greeks observed that the moon does not travel across the heavens at a constant, steady pace. Sometimes it appears to move faster, sometimes slower. Its apparent size even seems to change slightly throughout its monthly cycle. This is not an illusion, it is the result of its elliptical orbit, a path that brings it closer to Earth at some points and farther away at others. Astronomers call this the lunar anomaly. For a device claiming to model the cosmos, getting this detail wrong would be a glaring flaw, a sign of a simplistic or decorative model. The Antikythera mechanism does not get it wrong. It captures this subtlety with a stroke of mechanical genius. Deep within its gear train, the engineers devised a solution of breathtaking elegance. They used a special gear not mounted on a fixed axle, but driven by a small pin that slid back and forth within a slotted arm. As the main gears turned uniformly, this pin and slot mechanism converted that steady, even rotation into a gentle, rhythmic speeding up and slowing down of the moon's pointer on the front dial. The moon on the device did not just move, it breathed. It pulsed with the same irregular rhythm as the real moon in the night sky. This is more than clever engineering, it is a philosophical statement cast in bronze. It tells us the creators understood that the cosmos operates not with perfect, rigid circles, but with beautiful, predictable irregularities. They had moved beyond simple observation into the realm of precise mathematical modeling. Historians have long credited the astronomer Hipparchus, working in the 2nd century before the Common Era, with first mathematically describing this lunar anomaly. The existence of the Antikythera mechanism, likely built within a century of his life, presents a fascinating possibility. It suggests that his theoretical work did not just sit on a scroll in a library. It was translated almost immediately into a working physical model. Someone took those complex equations and gave them teeth, literally, in the form of interlocking bronze gears. This connection turns the mechanism from a standalone marvel into a potential missing link, a tangible bridge between abstract Greek astronomy and high ancient engineering. The pin sliding in its slot is a quiet revolution. It proves its builders were not just copying a design, they were implementing a deep theory. They sought not merely to show the heavens, but to replicate their true, intricate motion. In doing so, they left behind a question that echoes louder than any conclusion. If they could build this, what else did they know, and what other mechanical wonders have been lost to the silent depths of time? The back of the mechanism was a map of deep time. While the front dials showed the immediate dance of the sun and moon, the reverse face was designed for grander, more patient calculations. Here, two large spiral dials and several smaller ones tracked the slow, rhythmic pulses of the cosmos over decades. These were not just calendars, they were the beating heart of the machine's predictive power, encoding cycles so fundamental that an entire civilization could be built upon their regularity. The most prominent was the Metonic cycle, a period of 19 solar years that aligns almost perfectly with 235 lunar months. This synchronization of the sun and moon was of immense practical importance. Imagine trying to run a society where your religious festivals are tied to lunar phases, but your agricultural seasons depend on the solar year. Without a way to reconcile them, your calendar would drift into chaos, with spring festivals eventually falling in autumn. The Metonic cycle provided the solution, a 19-year blueprint for keeping lunar and solar time in harmony. By following the pointer around this spiral dial, a priest or a civic planner could know exactly when to intercalate or insert an extra month to keep the civic and celestial calendars locked together. It was the administrative rhythm of an empire cast in bronze. Just below the Metonic spiral sat its more dramatic counterpart, the Saros dial. This cycle, lasting approximately 18 years and 11 days, governs the repetition of eclipses. When the sun, moon, and earth return to a similar geometric alignment after this period, eclipses of a similar character will recur. The genius of the mechanism's designers was to make this cosmic clockwork not just visible but actionable. Inscriptions around this dial did not merely mark time, they offered warnings. Specific glyphs, deciphered from the faint Greek text, indicated whether an upcoming eclipse was likely to be solar or lunar. In a world where such events were often seen as omens, this predictive capability was profound. It transformed a terrifying celestial surprise into a scheduled, understandable event. A ruler or priest consulting the device could be forewarned. This was knowledge as power, the power to prepare, to interpret, and perhaps to reassure a populace gazing at a sun suddenly swallowed by shadow. And the refinement did not stop there. A smaller subsidiary dial nestled within this system tracked the Callippic cycle, a 76-year period that refined the Metonic by dropping one day every cycle for even greater long-term accuracy. This layering of cycles upon cycles reveals a society that did not just observe the sky, but engaged with it in a continuous, sophisticated dialogue. They sought not just to record patterns, but to perfect their models of them. The back of the Antikythera mechanism is a testament to patience, to the human desire to find order in the vast and seemingly chaotic movements of the heavens. It tells us that its users were planners, thinkers who operated on the scale of generations. They built a machine that could think across decades, so they could build a society that would last. With these celestial rhythms so perfectly understood and mechanized, one must wonder about the mind that first conceived of such a system. Who was the architect behind this bronze cosmos? The machine speaks to us in its own language, etched directly onto its bronze skin. More than 3,000 tiny Greek characters cover every available surface of the surviving fragments, a dense script smaller than the print in a modern newspaper. This is not decoration, it is the device's built-in mind, its technical soul written in metal. These inscriptions serve a brilliantly practical purpose. They are labels, instructions, and reference tables, a complete user manual fused to the computer itself. Next to a dial tracking the sun's path, the text identifies constellations of the zodiac. Beside the eclipse predictor, it notes the characteristics of upcoming events. This turns the mechanism from a mysterious artifact into a functional tool. The presence of this detailed guide implies a user who was literate and trained, but not necessarily the inventor. It was built to be operated, consulted, and understood by others, perhaps in a library, a temple, or a school of philosophy. The technical nature of the language is striking. It does not wax poetic about the beauty of the stars. It provides concise, operational data. It tells you what each pointer means and how to interpret its position. This practical focus shatters any lingering idea that the Antikythera mechanism was a mere ornamental showpiece for a wealthy patron. It was a working instrument, its value derived from the accurate information it produced with every turn of its crank. Among the most fascinating sections of text are the Parapegmata. These are calendrical notes that connect the cosmic cycles modeled by the gears to the rhythms of life on Earth. They might note that the rising of the star Arcturus traditionally signals the coming of certain winds, or that a specific phase of the moon was considered favorable for sowing crops. This creates a profound link. The machine does not just model an abstract mechanical universe, it directly ties the motions of the heavens to weather patterns, agricultural seasons, and by extension, the success or hardship of the community. It embodies a world view where the celestial and the terrestrial are inseparably woven into a single, predictable fabric. The painstaking work of epigraphers who study ancient inscriptions has been crucial here. They have spent decades piecing together these fragmented texts, letter by faded letter, like solving the world's oldest and most important jigsaw puzzle. Their reconstructions do more than explain the dials. They place the machine within a specific intellectual tradition. The philosophy reflected is Hellenistic, a period where Greek thinkers sought to understand nature through rational observation and mathematical law. The mechanism is a physical manifestation of this quest. It takes the grand philosophical idea of a cosmos governed by orderly principles and makes it something you can hold in your hands, a theory you can operate with a simple crank. By reading the words on the bronze, we are not just learning how to use a device, we are overhearing a 2,000-year-old conversation about the nature of the universe itself. This built-in manual confirms the machine was both a pinnacle of technology and a tool for daily and seasonal planning. It served as an anchor, tethering the vast, intimidating scale of cosmic time to the immediate, practical needs of human life. So we have the machine and we have its instructions, but this only deepens the central mystery. If such a sophisticated device, complete with its own technical literature, was being transported by ship, it could not have been the only one. Who else was building these celestial computers, and where did the knowledge to create them ultimately go? Yet for all its intricate detail, the mechanism holds back its most tantalizing secret. While the sun and moon dance perfectly within their bronze gears, the 5 wandering stars, the planets known to the ancients, remain just out of reach. Inscriptions on the device explicitly mention the cycles of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The front dial almost certainly had elegant pointers dedicated to tracking their paths. But the gears that would have driven those pointers, the physical heart of a planetary computer, are gone. They are the missing chapters of this ancient book, lost either to the corrosion of the sea or still buried in the unexcavated parts of the wreck. This absence is not a simple gap. It is the central puzzle that defines the frontier of modern research. To understand why, you have to consider what the ancient Greeks were trying to model. The planets do not behave like the sun and moon. From our earthly perspective, they generally drift eastward against the backdrop of stars, but periodically they pause, reverse direction in a loop called retrograde motion, then resume their original path. This isn't random, it's a geometric effect of planets orbiting the Sun at different speeds, but to an Earth-centered worldview, it presented a magnificent mathematical challenge. To replicate this stop and loop dance mechanically would require a gear system of staggering complexity. Modern researchers, studying the spaces and mounting points inside the fragmented case, propose the builders may have used epicyclic gearing. Imagine a small gear not fixed to a central axle, but mounted on the edge of a larger gear that itself is turning. This little gear would trace a loopy, curving path, a perfect mechanical analogy for the epicycles ancient astronomers used in their theories to explain retrograde motion. Constructing such a system in compact bronze with hand-filed teeth to accurately model 5 different planets with their unique periods would represent a peak of engineering ambition that is almost difficult to comprehend. Digital reconstructions by teams today are essentially exercises in reverse engineering a ghost. They take the known parameters of ancient planetary theories, the empty spaces in the CT scans, and the clues from the inscriptions, and they attempt to design a gear train that could fit and function. Several compelling models have emerged, each a masterpiece of theoretical archaeology, but without those original bronze gears to confirm them, the debate remains beautifully open. This unresolved planetary puzzle does more than highlight a technical mystery. It elevates our appreciation for the device's purpose. The creators were not satisfied with modeling just the sun and moon. They aimed for nothing less than a complete, working orrery of the known cosmos, a grand unified theory made manifest in metal. The missing planetary gears are a silent testament to that vaulting ambition. They remind us that what we have recovered, as astonishing as it is, might only be a fragment of a still greater whole, a physical question mark that continues to challenge our assumptions about the past. The gears and inscriptions of the Antikythera mechanism point us toward a specific moment in history, a golden age of innovation that made such a device not just possible, but perhaps even inevitable. This was the Hellenistic period, the 3 centuries following the conquests of Alexander the Great. Alexander's empire did more than redraw maps. It created a vast, interconnected world of shared ideas. Greek language, philosophy, and scientific inquiry flowed from Athens and Corinth to new, glittering capitals of learning like Alexandria in Egypt, Pergamon in Asia Minor, and the island of Rhodes. These were not just political centers, they were the Silicon Valleys of the ancient world, where mathematicians, astronomers, engineers, and master artisans worked side by side. In this climate, the boundary between abstract theory and hands-on craftsmanship dissolved. A philosopher was not someone who merely contemplated the stars, but someone who might also design the instruments to measure them. This is the cultural ecosystem that gave birth to the mechanism. It emerged from a society that believed the secrets of the universe could be unlocked through mathematics, and that those secrets should then be built, held, and used. The device is a perfect expression of the Hellenistic ideal, the synthesis of theoria and praxis, of deep understanding and practical application. We have literary echoes of this technological ambition. Ancient writers like Cicero and Plutarch describe wondrous devices built by earlier geniuses. They tell of a planetarium constructed by Archimedes that replicated the motions of the sun, moon, and planets, a sphere so exquisite it was said to capture the very essence of the cosmos. For a long time, historians read these accounts as poetic exaggeration, metaphors for philosophical ideas rather than descriptions of real machines. The Antikythera mechanism changes that reading entirely. It is physical proof that the technology to build such a planetarium not only existed, but was being deployed at a remarkably high level. The descriptions in the texts now sound less like fantasy and more like technical reporting. This forces a profound shift in perspective. We can no longer view classical antiquity solely through its surviving temples and statues, its literature and philosophy. We must also see it as a civilization of precision engineering. The workshops of Rhodes or Alexandria were capable of feats we never attributed to them. Artisans could cast bronze alloys of consistent quality, cut gear teeth with astonishing accuracy, and assemble these components into compact, functional assemblies. This was a culture that could turn a geometric proof into a working machine. The mechanism, therefore, is not an inexplicable anomaly. It is a survivor, a single data point from what was likely a thriving tradition of complex instrument making. Its existence suggests that the history of technology has a missing chapter, one written not on papyrus but in finely crafted bronze, now mostly lost to time. The quiet implication is staggering. If they could build this, what other mechanical wonders now vanished once graced the libraries and workshops of the ancient world? The seafloor near Antikythera is a snapshot of a journey that never ended. When archaeologists finally mapped the wreck site in detail, they found more than just a scattered pile of artifacts. They found the ghost of a ship, a large Roman merchant vessel perhaps 30 meters long, its wooden hull long since eaten away, leaving a telltale pattern of its cargo strewn across the seabed. This was not a humble fishing boat, but a floating treasury, a cargo ship on a specific and telling mission. Its hold was filled with bronze and marble statues, delicate glassware, gold jewelry, and fine pottery, all carefully packed for a long voyage across the Mediterranean. This was loot, or more politely, acquired art, being transported from the culturally rich Greek East to the new capital of power in the West, Rome. The Antikythera mechanism was nestled among these treasures. Its presence there is a crucial clue. It was not being carried as ballast or as a sailor's personal tool. It was packed and protected as a valuable object in its own right, a prized piece of intellectual property. This suggests it was not a one-off prototype, but a recognized masterpiece, something a wealthy Roman collector or a scholarly institution would pay handsomely to own. The ship itself becomes a character in the story. By studying the other items in its hold, researchers can pinpoint the moment its journey was violently interrupted. Coins found at the site date from the period just before the ship sank, roughly between 70 and 60 years before the Common Era. The styles of the pottery and sculpture align perfectly with this time frame. This evidence allows us to freeze the mechanism's history at a specific point. We know it was built no later than the 1st century before the Common Era, likely in the decades just before this voyage. Its construction, then, belongs to the twilight of the Hellenistic age, a final flowering of Greek science before the Roman world absorbed it. The ship's intended route tells a story of cultural transfer. It was sailing from the Aegean, perhaps from Rhodes, a known center of astronomy and engineering, toward the Italian peninsula. The mechanism was literally in transit from the world that created it to the world that would ultimately inherit, but perhaps not fully understand, its legacy. The violent storm that drove the ship against the cliffs of Antikythera did more than sink a vessel. It suspended that transfer. It buried a pinnacle of Greek scientific technology alongside the art it was meant to accompany, hiding both from Rome and from history for 2,000 years. This context transforms the mechanism from a purely technical marvel into a poignant historical object. It is a symbol of knowledge in motion, a physical piece of a great civilization's intellectual capital, captured en route to a new home. Its loss in the shipwreck is a tragedy that preserved it paradoxically by taking it out of circulation. Had it reached Rome, it might have been displayed as a curiosity, eventually melted down for its bronze, or simply lost to the chaos of centuries. Instead, the sea kept it safe, if broken, waiting for a time when we could finally appreciate what was almost lost forever. The wreck site is not just a grave for a ship, It is a time capsule that preserved the mechanism's purpose in amber, showing us it was considered precious enough to travel with kings and gods. The ship's cargo tells us the mechanism was a prized possession, but its design hints at a much grander intellectual inheritance. Among the scattered clues, one name from history shines with particular brilliance: Archimedes of Syracuse. Ancient writers, not known for wild technological fantasy, speak of his creations with awe. The Roman philosopher Cicero, writing more than a century after Archimedes' passing, gives us a specific and tantalizing account. He describes a bronze sphere, a planetarium built by Archimedes, that was brought to Rome as war booty after the sack of Syracuse. This was no simple model. Cicero writes that when set in motion, it displayed the sun, moon, and 5 planets moving through their orbits with such accuracy that it could even show the occurrence of solar and lunar eclipses. For centuries, historians read this as a metaphor, a poetic way of saying Archimedes understood the cosmos. The discovery of the Antikythera mechanism forces us to reconsider. Suddenly, Cicero's description sounds less like philosophical poetry and more like a straightforward technical report. The device he describes is, in function, almost identical to what was found off Antikythera. This parallel is too precise to ignore. While the recovered mechanism is dated by its shipwreck to several decades after Archimedes' lifetime, the connection is not severed, it is transformed. It suggests the Antikythera device may not be an original Archimedean work, but a descendant, built by later engineers working firmly within a tradition he is credited with founding. Think of it not as a lost masterpiece from his own hand, but as a brilliant copy of a classic text, translated from theory into physical form by a new generation of scholars. Archimedes was renowned not just as a mathematician, but as a peerless engineer, a man who built revolutionary war machines, ingenious pumps, and compound pulley systems. His mind was precisely the kind that would conceive of modeling the universe with interlocking gears. The mechanism we have could be a later implementation of his design principles, perhaps refined in the great workshops of Rhodes or Alexandria, where his legacy would have been studied and expanded upon. This link, while still speculative, does something profound. It rescues legendary accounts from the realm of myth and places them back into the realm of possible history. The Antikythera mechanism becomes a physical echo, a surviving fragment of a technological lineage we thought was only literary. It stands as evidence that the wondrous devices described by ancient chroniclers were not mere fables, but reports of a real and sophisticated engineering culture, one that has left almost no other physical traces. This connection underscores a poignant truth about lost knowledge. Great innovations are rarely solitary flashes. They are peaks in a mountain range, the most visible points of a vast intellectual landscape that often remains hidden. The mechanism may be our only tangible piece of that Archimedean landscape, a single, corroded clue pointing back to a world of mechanical wonders we can now only read about and dream of reconstructing. The silent mathematics of the mechanism finally found its voice through a digital resurrection. Using the precise 3-dimensional maps created by the CT scans, international research teams embarked on an extraordinary project to rebuild the device not in bronze, but in lines of computer code. These digital reconstructions are more than just animations. They are working hypotheses made visible, allowing every proposed gear interaction to be tested in a virtual space. By inputting the known astronomical cycles and the physical constraints of the fragments, researchers could simulate the machine's operation over decades, watching as virtual pointers glided across virtual dials to predict eclipses and lunar phases with silent, perfect accuracy. This process did something profound. It turned centuries of scholarly debate into a series of solvable engineering problems. If a proposed gear train caused a dial to stick or produced an incorrect date, the model would fail, forcing a return to the drawing board. This iterative digital tinkering has led to increasingly refined and elegant models that likely mirror the original designer's intent with remarkable fidelity. The most compelling of these virtual reconstructions show the entire assembly as a transparent, whirling galaxy of interlocking gears. You can witness a single turn of the input crank ripple through the entire system, engaging differentials, sliding pins, and rotating dials in a harmonious ballet of calculated motion. It is a mesmerizing sight, one that transforms dry technical descriptions of tooth counts and gear ratios into an intuitive, visual understanding of ancient genius. These digital models have become indispensable tools, not just for proving how the machine worked, but for exploring what it might have been capable of. They allow historians to experiment with adding the missing planetary gears, testing different epicyclic arrangements to see which ones could physically fit within the known confines of the wooden case and still produce the correct retrograde loops in the sky. This digital archaeology bridges a 2,000-year gap, letting modern minds collaborate directly with an ancient blueprint, testing ideas in minutes that would have taken the original builders months to carve and assemble. The final step in this journey from seabed to screen has been a return to the physical world. Using the validated digital plans, enthusiasts and researchers have crafted stunning physical replicas, often with three-dimensional printers or traditional craftsmanship. Holding a working model, hearing the soft click of bronze gears engaging, and turning the crank to see the moon's phase wheel turn is an experience that shatters time. It moves the mechanism from the realm of abstract historical wonder into the realm of tangible, operable truth. These reconstructions, both digital and physical, do more than confirm a theory, they complete a conversation. They allow us to not just study the Antikythera mechanism, but to finally operate it, fulfilling the intent of its long-vanished creators and making their celestial computer tick once more. This tangible proof of its functionality leads us to a deeper, more unsettling reflection. If this device was not a fluke, but a product of a known technical tradition, its lonely survival forces a difficult question about the fragility of knowledge itself. The Antikythera mechanism exists in a profound and lonely silence. For over 1,000 years after its creation, no artifact of comparable mechanical sophistication appears anywhere in the archaeological record. This is not a small gap, it is a chasm. The next time we see geared devices of such ambition and complexity is in the great cathedral clocks of medieval Europe, built in the 14th and 15th centuries. This millennium of silence is the mechanism's most haunting legacy. It forces us to confront a difficult truth about history, that progress is not a straight, inevitable line climbing ever upward. Knowledge, even profound knowledge, can be fragile. It can be concentrated in small circles, scattered by conflict, or simply forgotten when the institutions that nurture it fade away. The linear narrative we often hold of humanity steadily building on past discoveries shatters against the reality of this single, corroded box. Its existence suggests peaks of understanding that were reached, then abandoned, leaving later generations to climb the same mountain all over again, unaware a path had ever been forged. So we are left with two equally staggering possibilities. The first is that this device was a magnificent fluke, a one-off masterpiece from a singular genius, a lightning strike of innovation that illuminated the ancient world for a moment before the darkness closed back in. This is possible, but the sheer refinement of its design, the practicality of its inscriptions, and its presence on a cargo ship all whisper against it. A unique prototype is typically guarded, not shipped as commercial cargo. The second, more likely possibility is that the Antikythera mechanism was not an anomaly, but a representative. It was a product of a thriving tradition of precision engineering and astronomical instrument making in the Hellenistic world. Other devices like it, perhaps simpler or even more complex, would have been built and used in libraries, temples, and royal courts. Their bronze was eventually melted down for other purposes, their wooden cases crumbled to dust, and their very memory faded into legend. This loss transforms the mechanism from a curiosity into a solemn messenger. It is a physical signal from a lost continent of knowledge, a single surviving peak from a sunken mountain range of technical achievement. Its lonely survival underscores how much of the past is written not in stone, but in perishable materials and fragile oral traditions, vulnerable to the relentless erosion of time, conflict, and shifting priorities. The silence that follows its creation is not empty, it is full of questions. What other mechanical wonders adorned the workshops of Alexandria or Rhodes? What treatises on gearing and planetary motion turned to ash in the fires that consumed great libraries? The mechanism stands as a permanent corrective to our assumptions. It reminds us that history is not merely the story of what survived, but also a profound meditation on all that was lost. Our understanding of the ancient world is not a completed book, but a manuscript with missing pages, where a single recovered paragraph can force us to rewrite entire chapters. This artifact, therefore, is more than a clockwork computer. It is a lesson in humility. It asks us to look at the smooth arc of our technological timelines and to remember the gaps, the silences, and the forgotten peaks that hint at a far richer, more complicated human story. The true weight of this achievement becomes clear only when you hold the idea in your hands. Imagine the workshop where this device was born. It was not a dark, smoky forge hammering out swords and shields, but a quiet, sunlit space more akin to a jeweler's studio or a modern precision engineering lab. Here, the creation of the Antikythera mechanism required a symphony of specialized skills, a collaboration between the mind of the astronomer and the hands of the master artisan. Each component, from the largest gear to the tiniest inscribed letter, was a testament to a level of craftsmanship we rarely associate with antiquity. The process began with the gears themselves. Artisans used the lost wax method, a technique still admired for its ability to capture fine detail. For each unique gear, a model was first carved from beeswax, its teeth shaped with meticulous care. This wax model was then encased in a clay mold and fired, the wax melting away to leave a perfect negative cavity. Molten bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, was poured into this cavity. Once cooled, the clay was broken away to reveal a rough bronze casting, but the work was far from done. This raw gear was then handed to a filer, who would spend hours with delicate abrasives and tiny files, refining each tooth to its final, precise profile. The tolerances were astonishing, with some gear teeth measuring less than a millimeter across. A single error in this hand-finishing process could throw off the entire calculation of the cosmos it was meant to model. This was not brute force metalwork, it was micro-engineering. The housing for this delicate universe was a wooden case, likely crafted from a fine-grained, stable wood like oak or cedar. This case had doors to protect the front and back dials, and its surfaces were fitted with thin bronze plates. Onto these plates, another specialist, an engraver, would have carefully inscribed the thousands of Greek characters that served as the device's manual and labels. Using a sharp beron, they cut each tiny letter into the soft metal with a steady hand, their work illuminated by oil lamps or daylight from a high window. The scale of this collaboration challenges our modern stereotypes. We often picture ancient technology as either monumental, like the pyramids, or purely theoretical, confined to scrolls of geometry. The Antikythera mechanism exists in a different category entirely. It represents a seamless fusion of abstract science and high artisanal skill. An astronomer provided the mathematical ratios, the periods of the cycles. A master engineer translated those numbers into gear trains and mechanical layouts. The metal caster, the filer, the woodworker, and the engraver then brought that blueprint into tangible reality. This was interdisciplinary cooperation at the highest level, a meeting of the quadrivium, the mathematical arts, with the most advanced material arts of the age. The device itself is physical proof that these worlds were not separate. In that workshop, the theory of the moon's anomaly became a pin sliding in a slotted arm. The 19-year Metonic cycle became a spiral dial of exquisite craftsmanship. This level of specialization and coordination speaks to a mature technological ecosystem. It suggests the existence of workshops capable of producing not just one such device, but likely a lineage of them, each perhaps refining the design of the last. The quiet implication is that the maker of this mechanism was not a lone tinkerer, but part of a guild, a school, a tradition. The precision locked within its fragments tells us that the ancient world could achieve a standard of manufacture we simply did not believe was possible for them. This realization forces a quiet but profound shift in how we view the past, moving from a focus on what they wrote and built on a grand scale, to appreciating what they could engineer on a breathtakingly small one. Rhodes emerges from the evidence like a ghost on the horizon. While we cannot name the specific workshop or the hands that filed its gears, a compelling trail of clues leads us to this vibrant island at the heart of the Hellenistic world. In the 1st century before the Common Era, Rhodes was not just a bustling port, it was a brilliant intellectual beacon. Its famous school of astronomy attracted the finest minds, and one name towers above the rest: Hipparchus. His pioneering work on the motion of the moon, his precise mathematical description of its subtle speeding up and slowing down, is not just a theory in a scroll, it is the very soul of the Antikythera mechanism. The pin and slot device that models the lunar anomaly is a direct mechanical translation of his calculations. Finding such a specific implementation of his work suggests the mechanism was built in a place where his ideas were not just studied, but actively engineered into physical form. Rhodes was precisely that kind of place. Beyond the theoretical link, the practical details align. The shipwreck itself lies on a well-documented maritime highway, a direct sailing route from the eastern Aegean, where Rhodes was a major hub, to Italy and Rome. The vessel was almost certainly on this path when it met its fate. It makes perfect sense that a prized object of Rhodian craftsmanship would be on a ship heading west to the capital of a new empire. Even the handwriting offers a clue. Epigraphers who study ancient letterforms have noted that the style of the tiny Greek inscriptions on the bronze plates shows characteristics consistent with writing from the Rhodian sphere of influence during that period. It is a subtle fingerprint, but another piece that fits, of course. Other candidates have been proposed. Syracuse, the home of Archimedes, holds a powerful, legendary connection. Corinth was another major center of trade and craftsmanship, yet the evidence for these origins is more circumstantial, resting on general reputation rather than the specific, interlocking clues that point to Rhodes. The Rhodian hypothesis provides the most coherent narrative. It places the device exactly where we would expect to find it, at the dynamic intersection of cutting-edge astronomical theory and world-class artisanal skill. It imagines a workshop where the latest scrolls from the library were discussed over the workbench, where abstract cycles became tooth counts, and where the cosmos was not just contemplated but constructed. This probable origin story does more than satisfy historical curiosity. It completes the mechanism's identity. It moves it from being a mysterious orphan to a proud product of a specific time and place, a testament to the collaborative spirit of an island that stood as a crossroads of knowledge. If Rhodes was its cradle, then the mechanism is a direct message from that lost center of learning, a final, intricate gift from a world on the brink of profound change. The mechanism's Eclipse predictor is a window into an ancient mind, one that saw calculation and omen as two sides of the same coin. This was not merely a calendar of astronomical events, it was a guidebook for navigating the perceived will of the cosmos. The Saros cycle dial, with its 223-tooth gear, provided the cold, hard mathematics of orbital alignments, but the inscriptions surrounding it provided the why, or at least the ancient interpretation of it. Etched in the bronze are brief, coded descriptions. They note the expected color of an eclipse, a dim copper hue or a deeper, shadowed gray. They indicate the direction from which the shadow would appear to travel across the sky. To us, these are atmospheric details. To a Hellenistic priest, scholar, or ruler, they were vital data points in a celestial message. The color and direction were believed to hold specific meanings, portents for harvests, the fate of leaders, or the stability of kingdoms. This transforms the device from a simple calculator into an instrument of statecraft and spiritual preparation. A ruler forewarned of a dark omen could perform rituals, make offerings, or brace for potential unrest. The machine offered a powerful form of control, not over the heavens, but over the human reaction to them. It turned a terrifying celestial surprise into a scheduled event that could be managed, interpreted, and folded into the orderly running of society. This seamless blend is the key to understanding its era. For the people who built and used the Antikythera mechanism, there was no bright line between what we call science and what we term superstition. Observing the perfect regularity of eclipse cycles was a scientific act. Believing those cycles carried meaning for human affairs was a logical extension of a worldview that saw the universe as an interconnected, living whole. The device did not separate these ideas, it embodied their union. It served the astronomer calculating orbital periods and the priest seeking the god's intentions with equal fidelity. It was a tool for both navigating celestial mechanics and interpreting their perceived influence on the ground, a perfect reflection of a time when to predict an eclipse was to glimpse the intricate weave of fate itself. This dual purpose makes its loss all the more poignant, for it represents a complete system of understanding, one that linked the motion of the stars directly to the pulse of human life. The echoes of its bronze gears did not simply fade into silence. While no direct copy of the Antikythera mechanism has ever been found, the knowledge it represents, the very idea of modeling the cosmos with moving parts, may have traveled down hidden paths. In the centuries after the shipwreck, the great centers of learning shifted. The intellectual torch passed to the Islamic world, where scholars in Baghdad and Damascus preserved and expanded upon Greek astronomical texts. They built upon the tradition of the astrolabe, a simpler instrument for measuring star positions, but their most advanced designs incorporated intricate geared calendars and eclipse predictors. These devices, while not as complex as the Antikythera computer, demonstrate a continuous thread of thought, a practical engagement with celestial mechanics through geared machinery. It is a tantalizing possibility that the fundamental principles of differential gearing and mechanical calculation, perhaps preserved in fragmented manuscripts or oral traditions from workshops like those in Rhodes, indirectly seeded these later innovations. This knowledge would eventually filter into medieval Europe, finding its ultimate expression in the towering astronomical clocks of cathedrals, like the one in Prague, which displayed the motions of the sun, moon, and planets for all to see. The journey from a hand-cranked box in a Hellenistic library to a public clock on a Gothic tower spans more than 1,000 years, but the conceptual leap, the desire to make the heavens move by machine, connects them. The mechanism suggests this leap happened not once, but was a seed that lay dormant, waiting for the right conditions to grow again. Its modern rediscovery, however, has had a more immediate and seismic impact. For historians of science and technology, it is a before and after moment. Before its secrets were unlocked, the timeline of human innovation seemed clear, a steady march from simple tools to the mechanical wonders of the Renaissance. The Antikythera mechanism shattered that timeline. It proved, with physical, undeniable evidence, that the conceptual leap to complex mechanical computation occurred not in the workshops of 14th century Europe, but in the ancient Mediterranean, a full millennium earlier. This forces a fundamental rewrite. It turns the history of technology from a simple linear progression into a story with forgotten peaks, lost valleys, and cycles of discovery and loss. The device stands as a permanent corrective to our arrogance, a humbling reminder that our present does not represent the only possible peak of past achievement. For modern innovators, engineers, and programmers, it serves as both an inspiration and a profound cautionary tale. It is inspirational because it showcases the breathtaking heights human creativity can reach when brilliant theory meets exquisite craftsmanship, even without modern materials or electricity. It whispers that genius is not bound by era, yet it is cautionary because its lonely survival underscores the terrifying fragility of knowledge. An entire tradition of high engineering, a school of thought that could model the cosmos in bronze, was almost completely erased from memory, surviving only in a single, corroded lump at the bottom of the sea. It asks us what pillars of our own understanding are built on similarly fragile foundations, concentrated in digital formats or specialized communities that could, under the right circumstances, simply vanish. The Antikythera mechanism, therefore, is more than an ancient artifact. It is a mirror. It reflects our own place in time, challenging us to consider what we might have already forgotten, and what magnificent ideas lost to history are still waiting to be rediscovered. The quiet work of discovery continues in laboratories and on the seabed. While we now possess a stunningly clear blueprint of the Antikythera mechanism, modern research is focused on reading its faintest whispers, the inscriptions and material clues that could rewrite our understanding once more. This is not archaeology of the shovel, but of the photon and the particle. Scientists now employ a suite of non-invasive, cutting-edge imaging technologies. Polynomial texture mapping, for instance, captures the surface of the bronze under raking light from dozens of angles, revealing the subtlest scratches and impressions that form letters, even when the ink or engraving is invisible to the naked eye. X-ray fluorescence scanning maps the elemental composition across the fragments, distinguishing the original bronze alloy from later corrosion products, and sometimes even detecting the trace residues of ancient lubricants or the unique signature of the workshop's metal source. Each scan is a new page turned in a 2,000-year-old manual. A single, newly legible word can shift the interpretation of an entire dial. A previously unnoticed scratch might reveal the ghost of a gear mounting point, suggesting a component no one had dared to hypothesize. This meticulous pixel-by-pixel analysis has already borne dramatic fruit. Recent studies of the inscriptions and the empty spaces within the fragmented frame have led researchers like the team from University College London to propose a bold new model. They suggest the front display was even more dazzling than previously thought, with all 5 known planets not only represented, but moving on concentric rings through a complex, compact epicyclic system that perfectly reproduced their retrograde loops. This model fits the mathematical clues and the physical space, turning the device from a computer of the sun and moon into a true, complete orrery of the ancient cosmos. Each new proposal like this is a testament to the mechanism's bottomless complexity. It reminds us that our current understanding is a snapshot, a best guess based on the evidence in hand, and that the next scan, the next algorithmic analysis, could overturn it in an instant. The promise of new answers, however, is not confined to the laboratory. It also lies 30 meters beneath the waves at Antikythera. Modern maritime archaeology has transformed the wreck site. Using robotic submersibles, precise underwater grids, and sediment sifters, the ongoing Return to Antikythera project conducts systematic excavations with a surgeon's precision. Their work has already yielded astonishing finds, from a bronze spear that once belonged to a warrior statue to a skeletal remnant that offers a silent, human connection to the tragedy. But the greatest hope remains finding more of the mechanism itself. The recovered fragments are believed to represent only about 1/3 of the original device. Where is the rest? It could be buried in the sediment nearby, a scatter of gears and plates waiting for a careful hand to uncover them. Even more tantalizing is the possibility that this ship, carrying one such masterpiece, might have been carrying another. Could there be a second device in the wreck, perhaps a different model or an earlier prototype? The excavation continues season by season, driven by the thrilling possibility that the next dive, the next careful pass of a sifter, could produce a gear wheel that answers our oldest questions, or better yet, poses entirely new ones we have not yet been wise enough to ask. This is the living legacy of the Antikythera mechanism. It is not a closed book on a museum shelf, but an open invitation. It invites engineers to test its limits, historians to decode its context, and archaeologists to search for its siblings. It teaches us that the past is not a static monument, but a conversation, and with every new technological tool we develop, we learn how to listen just a little bit better. The final destination of this 2,000-year journey is a quiet room in Athens. In the National Archaeological Museum, the surviving fragments of the Antikythera mechanism rest in a specially designed, climate-controlled case, a sanctuary of stable temperature and humidity built to protect them for the next 2 millennia. Here, the physical reality of the artifact hits you. It is not a gleaming, reconstructed model, but a collection of fragile, greenish-brown lumps, their surfaces a complex topography of corrosion and calcification. They look like pieces of a forgotten ship's hull or strange geological specimens, not the guts of a revolutionary computer. This deliberate presentation is powerful. By showing the fragments in their true, weathered state, the display creates an honest bridge across time. You are not looking at a sanitized replica. You are standing inches away from the very object that spent centuries on the seabed, that was handled by the diver who found it, and that was painstakingly cleaned by generations of researchers. This proximity is a form of time travel. Beside these silent fragments, the museum places the keys to understanding them. Detailed physical models, often with cutaway sections, show how the gears would have been arranged. Interactive touchscreens allow visitors to virtually operate the device, turning the crank and watching the pointers glide across the zodiac. These modern interpretations do not compete with the ancient pieces, they complete them. They translate the silent, corroded geometry into a dynamic, comprehensible story. The display masterfully emphasizes two contrasting truths. First, the sheer fragility of the object, a reminder of how close we came to losing it forever and how much of it remains lost. Second, its monumental significance as a pivot point in our understanding of history. It celebrates not just the device itself, but the epic, century-long detective story that has slowly coaxed its secrets into the light. This story is told through the images of the early X-rays, the visualizations from the computed tomography scans, and the translations of the inscriptions. You witness the evolution of understanding from curious lump to astronomical calculator. The mechanism, in this setting, becomes more than an archaeological treasure. It is a centerpiece of human ingenuity, a physical anchor for a profound narrative about curiosity, loss, and rediscovery. For any visitor, it prompts a simple, humbling reflection. All of this, the gears, the cycles, the predictions, was contained within that modest, battered box. It is a must-see not merely for historians, but for anyone captivated by the enduring mystery of how a civilization can reach a dazzling peak of insight, only to have the light go out, waiting patiently in the dark for a future age to rekindle its flame. This corroded box of gears is a philosophical statement cast in bronze. Its very existence forces us to abandon a comfortable but outdated stereotype of the ancient thinker as a detached philosopher, pondering abstract ideals in a marble hall. The Antikythera mechanism proves its creators held a far more dynamic and potent worldview. They saw the universe not as a chaotic realm of capricious gods, but as a cosmos, a word that meant both beauty and order, a system governed by elegant, knowable laws. Their genius was to believe that these laws were not just for contemplation, but for replication. The mathematics describing the moon's path could be given physical form, its irregular rhythm captured in the gentle slide of a pin within a slot. This was a mechanistic understanding of nature, a profound conviction that the heavens operated like the most exquisite clockwork, with every event, every eclipse and planetary loop emerging from the predictable interaction of celestial cycles. This perspective quietly revolutionizes how we see the gap between ancient thought and modern science. We often frame the scientific revolution of figures like Galileo and Newton as a sudden, brilliant dawn, a break from a mystical past. The mechanism suggests the seeds of that revolution were planted over a millennium earlier. The Greeks who built this device were already practicing a form of science grounded in observation, expressed in mathematics, and verified through engineering. They built a predictive model of the cosmos and tested it against reality every time they turned the crank. The device is a missing link connecting the theoretical philosophy of figures like Aristotle, who spoke of the heavens' perfect motion, with the practical, mathematical investigation of nature that defines modern inquiry. It shows us that the desire to build a working model of the universe is not a modern impulse, but a very human one stretching back to antiquity. Most importantly, the mechanism shatters the artificial barrier we often erect between the thinker and the maker. In our modern categories, we separate the theoretical physicist from the precision engineer. The Antikythera mechanism declares that in its time, these roles were intertwined, perhaps even embodied in the same person or the same collaborative workshop. The astronomer who calculated the Saros cycle had to communicate intimately with the artisan who could file a gear with 223 teeth. The philosopher's theory of cosmic order became the craftsman's blueprint for a spiral dial. This synergy reveals a culture that saw no hierarchy between the idea and its execution, between understanding the world and actively building a reflection of it. The device stands as a monument to integrated intelligence, a testament to what humanity can achieve when deep thought and masterful craftsmanship are recognized as parts of a single, glorious endeavor. It asks us a quiet, reflective question about our own time. In our age of hyper-specialization, what transcendent creations might we be overlooking because we keep the thinkers and the makers in separate rooms? That silent conversation between ancient thought and modern inquiry now echoes in classrooms around the world. The Antikythera mechanism has escaped the confines of the museum case to become a dynamic teacher, a bridge across millennia that makes the past feel immediate and relevant. In history classes, it transforms a unit on ancient Greece from a list of wars and philosophers into a tangible story of innovation. Students are no longer just memorizing dates, they are investigating a technological mystery, piecing together clues about a society that could engineer the cosmos. This shifts their perspective from passive learning to active discovery, framing history as a living puzzle where new evidence can rewrite the story at any moment. The device becomes a portal, showing that the people of the past were not primitive, but were problem solvers and engineers whose ambitions we can still understand and admire. In science and physics classrooms, the mechanism provides a stunningly elegant entry point into complex concepts. The abstract mathematics of orbital periods, ratios, and cycles becomes something you can see and touch. A teacher can hand students a set of laser-cut plastic gears modeled on the device's train and ask them to assemble a simple model of the Metonic cycle. As they fit the gears together and turn the crank, they are not just learning about a 19-year period, they are physically enacting it, feeling the transfer of motion, and witnessing the mathematical relationship become a mechanical reality. This hands-on experience demystifies intimidating topics, turning them into a solvable, engaging challenge. Digital simulations take this even further, allowing students to manipulate virtual gears, adjust tooth counts, and instantly see how a change ripples through the entire system, predicting or disrupting an eclipse. It turns theoretical astronomy into an interactive experiment where failure is just another step toward understanding. Perhaps its most profound lesson is for engineering students. Here, the mechanism stands as a masterpiece of integrated systems design. It teaches that great engineering is not just about individual components, but about how those components work in harmony to achieve a complex function. Students analyze the pin and slot device for the lunar anomaly and see a brilliant solution to a real-world problem, a lesson in elegant design that is 2,000 years old. They learn about material science, considering why bronze was chosen, and about precision manufacturing, contemplating the skill required to hand-file those tiny teeth. This study connects the dots between disciplines, showing that to truly grasp the mechanism, you need history to provide context, astronomy to provide the problem, mathematics to provide the blueprint, and engineering to bring it all to life. This interdisciplinary nature is its core educational power. It shatters the artificial walls between subjects, demonstrating that real-world challenges and magnificent creations never exist in a single category. By studying this one object, a student learns that innovation happens at the intersection of fields, a lesson crucial for solving the complex problems of our own time. Ultimately, the Antikythera mechanism teaches a humble yet inspiring truth about technological progress. Its lonely survival and the millennium-long gap that followed it illustrate that advancement is not a straight, guaranteed climb. Knowledge can be lost, traditions can fade, and peaks of understanding can be forgotten. This non-linear path challenges the simplistic narrative of constant improvement and replaces it with a more nuanced, realistic view. It encourages resilience and curiosity, suggesting that sometimes moving forward requires looking back, recovering fragments of wisdom that earlier cultures possessed. For a young learner, this is empowering. It frames problem-solving not as a modern invention, but as a timeless human endeavor. It connects a student building a gear model today directly to the unknown artisan filing bronze in a sunlit workshop 2,000 years ago. They are both part of the same story, the endless human quest to understand the universe and to build tools that make that understanding clear. The mechanism tells every student that they, too, are inheritors of this long legacy of curiosity, and that their own creations, however modest, are the next verses in an epic poem of discovery that began long before them and will continue long after. The journey of the Antikythera mechanism from a museum curiosity to a cultural icon is a story in itself. This ancient computer has transcended academic circles to become a fixture of popular imagination, appearing in major documentary series, inspiring plotlines in best-selling novels, and even making cameo appearances in blockbuster video games and television dramas. This mainstream embrace has performed a vital, democratizing function, transforming a specialized subject of historical research into a topic of dinner-table conversation and online speculation across the globe. When a device is featured in a prime-time documentary or becomes a pivotal artifact in a fictional adventure, it reaches an audience no scholarly paper ever could. That widespread recognition generates a powerful ripple effect, fueling public interest that often translates directly into support for real-world science. Grants for further research, funding for new museum exhibits, and even applications from students eager to study archaeology or mechanical engineering can all trace a line back to that moment of public captivation sparked by a compelling portrayal. It is a virtuous cycle where popular fascination feeds academic inquiry, which in turn deepens the mystery for the public. Of course, this relationship between fact and fiction requires a gentle understanding. Popular media, by its nature, sometimes takes creative liberties, perhaps imagining the device as a key to lost Atlantis, or attributing its creation to visitors from beyond the stars. While historians might wince at the more fanciful embellishments, these narratives serve a profound purpose. They are gateways. They grab a viewer's or a reader's attention with the thrill of mystery, and in doing so, they open a door. A person who first encounters the mechanism in a fantasy game might, out of curiosity, search for its real story, leading them to a reputable documentary or a well-researched article. That initial spark of entertainment can ignite a lasting appreciation for the rigor of historical method and the quiet, patient work of discovery. This broad appeal underscores a fundamental truth about our relationship with the past. We are not merely drawn to dry facts and dates, we are drawn to stories of human ingenuity, to puzzles that defy easy answers, and to artifacts that whisper of lost worlds. The Antikythera mechanism, in all its corroded, enigmatic glory, is a perfect vessel for that kind of storytelling. Its very existence is a plot twist in humanity's timeline, a concrete what-if that challenges our assumptions. By capturing the public's imagination, it ensures that this 2,000-year-old conversation between the ancients and the moderns continues, not just in laboratories and lecture halls, but in the vibrant, ever-evolving arena of popular culture, where the next generation of curious minds is always just being recruited. The silence surrounding its creators is as profound as the device itself. We can reconstruct the gear trains with digital precision, but the names of the engineers, the faces of the artisans, are lost to time. Who were the specific individuals who conceived this bronze cosmos? We see the shadow of a tradition, a school of thought centered in places like Rhodes, but the mastermind remains anonymous. Was this a unique commission for a royal patron or a visiting scholar, a one-of-a-kind masterpiece to showcase the pinnacle of Greek science? Or was it, perhaps more intriguingly, one of many produced in a workshop, a model from a catalogue of celestial computers, each built to order for temples, libraries, or wealthy individuals across the Mediterranean? The evidence tantalizes in both directions. Its sophistication suggests a singular genius, yet its practical design and presence on a commercial cargo ship hint at a more standardized object of trade. This central ambiguity may never be resolved, leaving the human story a permanent silhouette against the glare of their achievement. Equally haunting is the question of the knowledge itself. What happened to the intricate understanding of gearing, metallurgy, and astronomical modeling required to create it? The device proves this knowledge existed, concentrated and highly advanced. Its subsequent disappearance for 1,000 years suggests that such expertise was not widespread, but held in fragile, specialized circles. Perhaps it was an oral tradition, passed from master to apprentice in a single workshop, vulnerable to the disruptions of war, economic decline, or simply the passing of a generation without a worthy successor. The great libraries that might have held its blueprints suffered fires and decay. The practical manuals written on papyrus turned to dust. The knowledge did not vanish in a cataclysm, but likely seeped away, fragment by fragment, until the very memory of how to build such a thing became a legend, then was forgotten entirely. Our understanding is also bounded by the physical fragments themselves. We have roughly 1/3 of the original mechanism. The rest is still on the seabed or was corroded into unidentifiable dust. This incomplete state means we are, in a very real sense, trying to reconstruct an entire symphony from a few recovered bars of music. We may never know the full splendor of its original appearance, the exact arrangement of every planetary pointer, or whether it had additional, unknown functions hinted at by empty spaces on the dials. Every new model proposed by researchers is a best guess, a brilliant hypothesis shaped by the gaps as much as by the evidence. Yet these lingering questions are not failures of scholarship. They are instead the very engine of the mechanism's enduring fascination. The unanswered mysteries are what keep it alive as an active, vibrant field of research. Each season, new imaging techniques are applied to the fragments, promising to reveal another faded letter or a hidden scratch that could shift the paradigm. Each summer, archaeologists return to the wreck site, sifting sediment with the hope of finding another gear, another plate that could complete the puzzle. The mechanism refuses to be a closed case, a solved artifact to be filed away. It remains an open question, a conversation with the past that invites every generation to bring its newest tools and its freshest curiosity to the table. In this way, the Antikythera mechanism transcends its own history to become a powerful symbol. It symbolizes the endless human quest to understand our intellectual heritage, to recover the lost chapters of our own story. It reminds us that history is not a sealed book but a vast, partially lit landscape, where a single discovered lantern can illuminate paths we never knew were there. The mystery is not a barrier to understanding, but an invitation to keep looking, to keep questioning, and to remain humble in the face of how much those who came before us truly knew. That single artifact, resting quietly in its museum case, is a silent witness to a forgotten zenith. It speaks of a moment in time when human ingenuity reached a breathtaking peak, a bronze whisper from the past that compels us to rethink everything we thought we knew about the timeline of progress. From its stormy discovery by a sponge diver to its high-tech decoding with hospital scanners, the journey of the Antikythera mechanism reveals a Hellenistic world far more dynamic than we ever pictured. This was not an age of passive philosophy, but of active engineering, where the cosmos was not just observed from a distance, but was understood deeply enough to be reconstructed in miniature, with gears and dials that turn prediction into a physical act. The device forces a quiet revolution in our perspective. It asks us to look at the smooth, upward arc we often draw for technology, and to see instead a landscape with forgotten mountains. Here was a summit of mechanical and astronomical knowledge, reached over 2,000 years ago and then lost to view for a millennium. This 1,000-year leap, this gap between its creation and the next comparable machines, is not just a curiosity. It is a profound lesson in the fragility of knowledge, a reminder that advancement is not guaranteed and that the light of understanding can flicker and fade, leaving later generations to walk in darkness until they find the path again. As we reflect on this, it should inspire two powerful emotions. First, awe for the sheer, dazzling ingenuity of those ancient minds, who with no electricity, no precision machine tools, and only the materials at hand, built a working model of the universe. And second, a deep humility about the gaps in our historical record. The Antikythera mechanism is a permanent corrective to our assumptions, a physical proof that our picture of the past is built from the fragments that survived, not from the complete library of what once existed. It stands as an invitation to keep looking, to keep questioning, and to remain open to the possibility that the next discovery from the earth or the sea could once again rewrite the story we tell ourselves. If this journey into ancient computation has captivated you, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What part of this mystery resonates most with you? For more explorations into history's greatest puzzles and forgotten wonders, be sure to subscribe. And as you go, carry this thought with you. Sometimes the most profound truths are found not in what we already know, but in the quiet, patient hope of what we have yet to rediscover.